All right, thank you everyone for your patience. We're having a few technical difficulties up here with board docs, so we'll get started in just a minute. Have to refresh it and then click on the agenda again. Okay.
We'll put it on.
Okay.
So today was
Yeah. Okay.
no turn.
Okay. Yep. Do you have a pen that works? I got it. All right. So are you ready? Okay. I would like to call to order the regular governing board meeting. The time is 7:07. Let the record show all board members are present. And I would like to call for a moment of silence to honor the memory of those who perished in 9/11. Please rise.
Flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
So I know they've left the room, but I would like to say thank you to the Deer Valley High School Air Force Junior ROTC Color Guard for the presentation of the colors this evening. All right, so I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, all right, so the motion carries 5-0. We will begin with governing board reports. Mrs. Ordway, can we start with you?
I hope everyone had a good holiday yesterday, or a I'm not that far, fall break day. Although the weather would be nice if it was cooler. Arizona School Board Association had a very filled conference with a lot of workshops and breakout sessions on things that are current. It was their legal conference, so a lot of the lawsuits that are setting precedent were there. So you got to interact with different districts and the lawyers for those different districts, which is kind of a small family, the lawyers for school districts. But things to watch out for to make sure that our kids are being serviced properly and our parents have the best opportunities and what their options are if we don't provide those best opportunities. But it was nice to see the different levels of employees from all the different districts. And that was interesting because it came off of being able to go to a press conference that was called Think Before You Post, and I'm sure Dr. Finch is going to include that in his report. But that was a major effort from law enforcement from, I think, 4 different counties to let everyone know that hoaxes that refer to threats on campuses affect more than, oh, you got the day off from school. It actually can scare children, and it's an offense, but Dr. Finch will go through that. Football games have been interesting to watch. We did have a team from Hawaii come in, and there was a lot of camaraderie. They're learning how their differences are not outweighed by their similarities. Although one of the big things was the boys from Hawaii did clean the hosts' dishes when they were done, and the ones that were from Arizona weren't so sure that their boys would do that if the roles were reversed. I do have a request for a study session, or at least to understand what our process is to pick our lawyers and the implementation of the processes. So I think there's two policies, and I didn't write the numbers down, but whichever policies we have that guide and govern us to pick our legal counsel, I would be interested in going over that and seeing how we're applying it, and that would be an awesome thing sooner than later. It doesn't have to be before the end of the year would be great.
Did you want to see that as a work session with information presented to the board, or as a study session where the public has the opportunity
I would like to
comment?
have the information sent to us in a Thursday update or whatever day update, and then I would like to at least have it as a discussion item.
On a future agenda?
Absolutely,
Okay.
because I would like to have a discussion in the public venue so people can understand how we do what we do.
Right, I just wanted to make sure I understood your
It
request.
doesn't have to be a study session, it could be a discussion item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. First of all, if you missed the celebration part of it and are just now tuning in, honoring 35 students from across our district for their AZ Merit scores is a great way to start our evening for sure. In addition, I was able to attend the inaugural A for Arizona State of Excellence Gala, where they honored those making significant contributions in education. So that was always a wonderful time to be with people when we are celebrating what is going on in education. Also loved being able to see the FBI news conference, to see all the agencies that are working together in that effort. I was also able to attend the ASBA pre-conference and law conference. I have shared my flash drive with Mrs. Taylor that has the presentations from all the speakers so that she can share it with all board members. A couple of highlights for me was a session on FERPA. The Colorado Attorney General is really looking at what is truly covered by FERPA, what is student product, so that we can start looking at what information is shared, much like in Arizona now when there is bullying, harassment, that we need to be contacting the parents of the victim so that they have the proper information. So it was just very interesting from a legal standpoint to see what some other states are doing. And I think we need some additional training for our admin and staff on FERPA. Rosalind Wiseman, also an incredible speaker on respect and dignity. And Ron Suskind, again, did not disappoint on his book and movie Life Animated about his child with autism. I was able to stop in and to watch a little bit of the Project Momentum meeting that happened at Barry Goldwater High School. Great to see district staff, administrators, and know that they are on track. You know, we're already doing some of those things in our schools. Had the opportunity to be a part of a school safety meeting with City of Phoenix Mayor Williams and Chief of Police Jerry Williams, and many of their officers regarding school safety, and to learn how the agencies across our city and state are working together to make sure, along with the school districts, that our students are staying safe, and in times of crisis that they have some awesome plans. There was some discussion about having that information get out more to parents and community members. I think I was really awed by how much is being done, and I don't think there's enough education out there, information for our parents and community members. And one of the other things that was highlighted both at the law conference as well as our school safety is related to the mental health and wellness of our students, which is touching on the suicide and where we're seeing suicide rates, where not just attempts, but the completion of it in record numbers, but also in younger numbers. They talked about that 10 to 14 range where there didn't used to be statistics there. So it was really an excellent law conference and really some great opportunities to learn about what's going on with other agencies in our state.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien, for that report. Mrs. Fisher?
I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the positives and fun things in the district. The football, our kids are, I guess the only way to say it is they're amazing. My entire family has taken we've banned the NFL from our home, so we have really taken to the football games. In fact, my son drags us around the wherever he can to watch them. And we have really, win or lose, our students are amazing. They display such honorable behavior in our athletics. And I just have to give kudos to our coaches because that's a learned behavior. They learn how to have that good sportsmanship, and I've seen a lot of that lately. And of course, the bulldog at Barry Goldwater is just awesome. It matches my schnauzer, so it has my heart. But so that's been really a fun thing for us to do. One thing I would like, if we could get a schedule, I know that our athletics department has a schedule of all schools, and kind of rather than fishing from campus to campus, finding the games.
Need your own Sheila.
Yeah, I don't have a Sheila, so
Well,
yeah,
wait a minute.
I would
Yes,
just
we
like a
do.
sheet.
She can get you that.
Yes, we do. That's Sheila.
So that would be awesome. It's my son took us to one game, and we got to the school, and then we realized, yeah, they're playing in Prescott, so we switched.
Been
but
cooler.
it would have been. The other thing is, I have been looking a lot at suicide prevention, and speaking with individuals in the community. I really think this is something that we need to take a look at. I know that you're going to be giving us data on our social emotional programs, but a social emotional program is not suicide prevention. Whatever curriculum we use or don't use is a procurement concern, but we have to have a set suicide prevention. It's that one kid that we could have helped, could have saved. I know the 13 Reasons Why was a very controversial, I think, Netflix show. But I as I watched it the first time, I thought, that is so true. Somebody could have seen that. Or the very last one was the student with the guidance counselor, the one last chance that I could have done something different. And that guidance counselor, he did all the things that an adult that's untrained would do. But suicide is very specific, and you're not looking for the kid that's dressed goth and is depressed and is sad and is crying. You're looking for that student who maybe is a straight A student, the cheerleader, the football player, and has the world on their shoulders. We just don't know it. So I really think either we should have a study session or something after you get us the data, but we need to talk specifically suicide prevention and district-wide. That's my request.
So, Ms. Fisher, I will discuss with Dr. Finch. I agree that we should have a study session so that community members can have an opportunity to have a dialogue with us, much like the dialogue that we had over the Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook.
I would really appreciate that.
We will find a date on the calendar for that.
I would really appreciate that. And then the law conference. I have a love-hate relationship with ASBA. Mostly hate these days. Because they are, in my opinion, no longer a bipartisan organization. They are a very Democrat and liberal leading organization, but I do attend the law conference and the annual conference because it is, you can always get snippets. Even if you're meeting with someone that you maybe don't agree with, you can still find value in what they say, even if you don't agree 100% with the whole part. And there were some very concerning moments that you know, Dr. Finch and I kind of looked at each other at least once and said, really? But there is value. So I do attend these conferences. Saturday at the legislative delegate meeting, I think things pivotably changed for me. I was already somewhat annoyed that despite the fact that this board had extensively discussed last year that we did not have an alternative, a member of the board or someone of the prior administration had elected to put someone in as our delegate, which is a board decision. It's something that the board majority and the board decides.
Can I just have
So-
you explain what you're talking about? Because you're kind of talking from like we know what you're talking about.
You don't know what the delegate assembly is, or which
No, I
part?
know what that is. That was a little ridiculous to say.
That's what I'm saying, which
You're
part?
talking about alternative what?
The alternative legislative delegate.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that's where
Yeah.
you were coming from, so.
Well, that's where at the delegate assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So someone took it upon themselves, either on the board or on the prior administration, to go against the majority of the board and put an alternative in. That's concerning because there's multiple times that we have had things where one or two, I think the one thing that this board always agrees on is that we have no authority unless we are, our vote, that's our authority, that's it.
We think that was a clerical error. That
It was
that
very extensive.
wasn't
It-
anybody on the board.
That's not really significantly important. It's just something that I think that, and that's part of the request, is that I think we need to discuss our relationship with ASBA. The reason being is that as the delegate assembly went on and the agendas that have continued to grow within ASBA, they are increasingly liberal, they are increasingly Democrat-leaning, they are increasingly contrary to, I believe, our voters. And so I am requesting that we have a conversation about what our relationship, I'm not saying we need to end it, but what our relationship does look like. We have to honor the people who elected us here, and if we are elected by one group and then we are operating counter to what they have asked us to do, to me, that's very concerning. We can't double speak. And so I'm requesting that we actually have a conversation, either as a board or perhaps it may be that the 3 guaranteed board members decide that whoever is elected in November, they have that conversation then. But it's concerning that we are operating against what our voting base has requested from us and has expressed. So
So we
That's
can
the
put
second.
that, we can put that
Yeah.
on a
That
future
is the
agenda
second-
as
that is
a
the second
board
request.
discussion item.
as far as informing the board of kind of where their agenda did go, there were some minor tweaks, but virtually everything that was on the draft agenda is moving forward on their agenda for the legislative session this coming. So pretty much the entire thing that we discussed passed. Okay?
Okay.
And so that's
Thank
it.
you for providing that information. Okay. Ms. Tweedy?
I just wanted to mention, I guess I was a little bit taken back because President Frank and I did agenda review with Dr. Finch, and we placed things on the agenda how we thought they made sense, and we tried to honor the subtle distinction between a productive conversation and bloviating. So we listed some things on the consent agenda, which were policies that have already been reviewed twice in a meeting. So it wasn't a matter of us wishing to rubber stamp, and the policies were listed on the agenda. And we told Dr. Finch to send out an email to the board that if somebody had a concern with the material content of one of the policies, that we would pull that, review it, and discuss it. And I would be all for a meaningful discussion on any one policy that we had concerns about adopting. But to reread 16 policies and discuss each one and make a separate motion, it's just going to give me the opportunity to practice my patience and my diplomacy. So I'll work on it. The other thing, I just would like to concur with what Ms. Fisher said. And I do agree we should have a study session. I felt like last week, I definitely wanted to be able to talk to the parents who came to our board meeting.
Study session on the suicide
On
prevention.
the suicide prevention, because I do agree it's different than character education, so I do concur with that. And when people speak at public comments and we can't answer and ask questions, it's a little hard to have a conversation, but I would like to have that conversation.
Okay.
So-
So we will find a date for that to occur.
And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tweedy. So to just bring back to the topic that several of us have expressed concerns about, the suicide prevention, we did have some parents speak at public comments at one of our meetings recently, very movingly, about a very, very emotional, very difficult topic. And this came across my email at work today, so I wanted to share it with the board. I already forwarded it to Dr. Finch. Maricopa County Public Health does a series of professional development for school nurses called the School Health Office Educational Series. I've attended almost every one of them. This will be the 9th one in the series. And so the email that landed in my inbox today, they have a new series on October 15th, and the first workshop is a hands-on workshop to hear from an expert in childhood anxiety and suicide, learn to recognize signs in your students' behavior, and intervention tools you can integrate into your school. So I think it is very timely. I hope that you will identify staff to attend it. It's free, and I would ask that you send it to board members if you would like to attend the event. It will be October 15th. There's a link. You need to register through Eventbrite, but there's no charge. I will be there as part of my work commitment, but it's 8 to noon at Saguaro High School in the Scottsdale district. So there will be the series, all the things they've presented have been excellent. So I just wanted to share this with the board. And then on a lighter note, I did have the opportunity to attend the Sierra Verde Business Partner Breakfast, and it was just great to see all of the projects the kids were working on, how the school has really integrated their critical thinking, STEM, the engineering design process, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful morning. Dr. Finch gave some excellent remarks, so proud to have him as our superintendent. And that is it for my report. Dr. Finch, take it away.
Just to kind of summarize what everyone has been saying, pointing to the suicide prevention discussion, that report will be done at our next board meeting for the board. This is where we're gathering all our information on our social emotional programs at each campus, what they offer, et cetera, et cetera. That'll give us a kind of a baseline to start from. And then it would make sense to have that follow right after we get that information. Then we'll know a little bit more, and I'll know a little bit more too about where we're at and what training do we need, what programs we might want to implement. So probably early October would be a good choice, or late September would be a good choice to have that study session they were referring to after we get our information, because we need to be able to talk from knowledge. That would be my recommendation. I know our nurses and our counselors just had some training last week, so but something that's obviously keeps recurring in our system, and we're trying to stay on top of as well. Big topic. Other things I want to mention too. I don't know if many of you caught on social media, but many of our choirs were singing the national anthem at the D-backs game. About 700 kids. Quite the production. David Duarte, our own leader, was the conductor, and it is on Twitter. And obviously the crowd was very excited about it, because that's unique to have 700 choir members singing the national anthem, and our district was at the center of that. So congrats to Dave and the students. A couple of folks mentioned the FBI conference or press conference that was here. That was powerful to see how they work together. And I have met some of those folks in other environments, but to see them all together was good for me to intersect with them as well, and then to point them to the people on our teams that work in that arena. And their whole point was around social media, about kids posting before they're thinking. And we know that's a big deal, and I think they did a nice job raising the awareness that that's a big deal, and it can have consequences, significant ones. So that was a valuable press conference that was hosted here in this very room. So I also want to mention that the Superintendent's Advisory Council started. I know Ms. Frank helped us out last year when we did environmental studies. That's a powerful group that impacts our whole district. So we're looking forward to another exciting year. There's about 50 kids that come together, and then they branch out and impact each of their communities, so and their schools. So looking forward to that. The projects they're working on this year, it looks like we're pointing towards something around cultures. So we'll see as the students narrow in on the topic, but that looks like the direction we're going. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Finch. And that brings us to Fiscal and Business Services. Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. Two reports to share with you this evening, starting with the August financial report. This is the first report that we're able to provide for this fiscal year 19. And this report, although very early in the year, I always like to caution these reports get much more accurate as the year goes on. But projecting a carry forward amount of just over $111,000 for this year. Comparing that to where we were last year, we were just over $200,000 in projected carry forward. So as we continue to budget tighter and tighter to be able to make some of the decisions we made in setting this year's budget, it's being reflected in the projected carry forward, at least at this point in time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the financial report.
Any questions for Mr. Miglerino? Okay.
On the second report we have is the student enrollment report. This is for August 29th, the 17th day in session. We're also providing additional information to the board, so I don't want to confuse you, but this report was the one that was able to make it into this report. You've seen a more recent report that we have sent to you that actually is a little bit better in terms of the numbers, but down about 55 students comparing the 17th day of session to this year to the same period of time last school year, or 0.2%. We cut that in half 1 week later, picked up about 28 more kids, growing at the elementary and declining at the high school, which is the trend that we will see throughout probably the duration of the remaining, at least first semester and into the early part of the second semester. So I think the point that's worth noting here is this is a current year funding scenario, again, for this year as a reminder, but we were projecting about 0.5% decline in the budget that that the board approved. At 0.2, we're doing better than that. It's early, so we're not counting any chickens yet. But we are beating the demographer's projection as well, which is also something that we've been striving to do, is do better with student enrollment than the demographer's projection. So early in the year again, day 17, but positive trend in regards to student enrollment, although it is a decline over the previous year.
Well, we'll always take good news when we can get it. So any questions for Mr. Miglerino? Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. Mr. Miglerino, the 0.5% decline that the demographer had indicated that we'll have for this year, and you're saying we budgeted for that in the budget?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, that is correct. That is what we based our ADM projection on and built our budget on, is a 0.5% reduction of students.
Okay. And then I know that in some of the updates we're seeing information regarding new neighborhoods being built, especially in the northern area, and there were some public comments and concerns regarding other schools who, if it's not already in the, I guess by Dr. Finch and Mrs. Taylor, what are our capacities for all of our schools, so that we could do a comparison versus what our enrollment numbers are, and be looking at that. I think that there was some information stated during those public comments that may not be completely accurate. So I just want to make sure that as board members, we have those numbers of where we're at versus what we can handle. That
Yep.
makes sense.
And again, probably the vote on that concept will be at the 25th meeting, so we want to make sure we'll have all that data for you, so you can make a good decision.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Tweedy?
I just want clarification. How is that going to be presented? You're going to tell us what % capacity each school's at? I'm clarifying with Ms. O'Brien because I would like to know the percentage of capacity we're at.
Is there a report on
For
capacity?
example, the newspaper last week said one of our schools up north was at 50% capacity. So are you going to give us a report that tells us the capacity?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, the report that's in the demographer's report, the standard report that we use, basically states the school facilities board capacity and the actual number of students enrolled in the school. So yes, that can be calculated as a percentage if that's the way the board would like to see it. It's just actually whole numbers the way it is in the report. We also do a capacity report that we typically do at the end of September, so we can do it a little bit early, knowing that we have an item that is tentatively scheduled for the September 25th meeting, in which we look at the 5-year trend of enrollment at the school, along with not only the school facilities board capacity, but what we refer to as the classroom capacity. So we take every classroom space on a campus and assume a set number of students in every classroom, so that would be the maximum number of students that we think that we could actually fit into that space. So the SFB capacity can be a little bit misleading. It's a calculation based on total square footage. So for example, a school like Legend Springs has very large hallways. That counts against the capacity. We don't do a whole lot of instruction inside the hallways.
Well, that was the point to my question. What capacity are we receiving? Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking.
So typically we use school facilities board capacity or what we refer to as classroom capacity. So we count the total number of classrooms and assume a certain number of students in every classroom. So we've done it both ways.
I think, personally, I think it would be helpful to have the classroom capacity because, as you point out, we don't generally hold class in the hallways. So if you're going total square footage and you're including hallways, gymnasium, various other parts of the school, I'd like to know what we can fit in our classrooms for instruction.
Yeah,
I
President
don't
Frank.
know if other board members feel the same.
I would concur with you because I know there is a difference between what the SFB does and then what Mr. Migliorino was just explaining, and that there's a difference between that and what we can actually have in our classrooms. And I think that is important for us as board members and for our community to understand that there's a difference. So that's my preference if the rest of the board
And it's going to be for all schools. And we'll get it for all schools.
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, I think we have it for all the elementary schools. I don't think we have that information for the high schools.
Well, I think just for now, the elementary, is that what you're talking?
Do you have it for the K-8s?
I'm sorry, for all of the schools that serve preschool through 8th grade.
Okay. Not to be picky, but I just want to make sure.
Right. And I will say the classroom capacity also has a flaw in it because it does not allow for consideration of any special area programs, right? So when you see a classroom capacity, that's going to be as if every classroom on the campus was holding a homeroom class.
So that would include your art class, your music class, your learning lab.
That's correct. Music, band. So every classroom as if it was a homeroom class.
Okay, so not to be demanding, but it must be possible to get the number of those classrooms included in the report. So for example, like at Highland Lakes, they have X number, they probably have 2 art rooms because they're a K-8. I'm sure they have a band room and a music room. So we can subtract that. I just want to get as accurate information as possible. I don't want to be making decisions based on misleading information. Is it possible to do that, or is that?
Everything's possible. Time
Or
is
is
our
that- or
enemy.
is that being-
And Jim has a day job. That's part of the problem, but he probably knows people.
Okay, so I don't want to ask for things that are going to be a hardship. I'm just saying, is this possible to?
You know what, we could
from the
we
look
could
on Jim's
consider that.
face, I'm guessing he doesn't look thrilled with my request. So
You know what, we kind of know.
we could probably figure it out.
We'll figure it
so.
out on our own.
You'll have to do your own extrapolation.
Okay, we'll do our own homework on that. We won't put that on you. Thank you, Mr. Miglerino.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to our public comments. Leanne Hall. And just to follow our procedure, we will read the admonishment, although I realize you have read it already on the back of the card. So if you could bear with us.
The board invites public comments on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing their name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers with the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conducts, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticisms made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that an item be put on a future agenda.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
President Frank, members of the board, and Superintendent Finch, really excited to be here again, and I'm super encouraged to hear the continued dialogue and interest in suicide-specific prevention. And it's interesting that you all spoke, or at least some of you spoke, about the distinction between SEL and suicide prevention. So as you're going forward and putting this as a priority in your agenda, I hope you will continue to really delve into the difference and understanding to distinguish that SEL is not the same. So you can analyze all of your current programs that you have for SEL, but that's not what we need. With an 85% uptick in the state, district-wide, of suicides, you need something different here at the district, and it is a suicide-specific prevention programs. I don't care what it is. I did provide you with I wrote the bill, I lobbied for it, and it was implemented into law. Jan Brewer signed it for me before she was finished. So with all of the suicide, as you're going forward to look at training and suicide prevention for the kids, it is so important that you have the training for the adults. And I heard you mention about the nurses and counselors. That's awesome. But every teacher, this bill, and most of you don't even know that I can go from school to school. Nobody's familiar with this bill. And that bill was 4 years ago that allows for teachers to get credit for any kind of suicide prevention training. Wouldn't it be awesome if every teacher was aware that this was an option for them, especially with the lives at risk in the districts in our state these days? So I just want to encourage you to really distribute that information, make it available for teachers to understand they can get training, they can get credit for that training, and to really dig in and understand the difference between SEL programs and suicide specific. Totally different. SEL was okay up until now. It's not sufficient for the challenges that our kids are facing on a day-to-day basis. We have new challenges for these kids. We need to have new programs. I love the possibility of having a community forum. I think it'd be fabulous to have an actual task force, and I would volunteer my services to be on that task force to help provide information and the dialogue between the community and the educators and the different schools. So this is definitely progress that we're continuing this discussion. I'm sad to say I won't be here next month. I'm sure you'll all miss me so much. I will be traveling, but thank you again for this. I don't think we're out of time, and I don't think there's anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming to speak with us again and for providing the information. Okay, so that moves us on to old business. 5A, second reading and adoption of revised governing board policy BCB. I will need a motion.
I recommend that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt revised policy BCB, board member conflict of interest.
Second.
Is there any, Mrs. Fisher, you had requested pulling this from the consent agenda?
I did, and I'd actually like to make a statement. I did not pull these to upset Miss Tweedy. I did not at any point say she's rubber stamping the policies. What I've stated is that we have not actually read them. We've received multiple reports from our administration of what is changing, but we never actually have read it. In the past, we have had study sessions where we go through and we actually, on the first read, discuss the policies, and we have not done that. So yes, I did ask to remove them from the consent agenda. I have suggestions. Of course, I've made it clear I would prefer never to have a copyright for someone else on our policies. They're either our policies or they're someone else's. But for this, for the purpose of BCB, I have some concerns when they talk about it has just upon refrain from vote and otherwise participating. Now, further on down, it does talk about influencers. However, we don't clarify in here that they influence as far as just putting pressure on someone. I think it's important that perhaps we consider putting that in that section. They may be others, not necessarily in the committee. The reason I take a look at that is because you look at what did occur. A lot of this stuff is because of what occurred in Scottsdale, which I don't think is a good measure because there's not a lot the board could have done about that because it wasn't presented to them that way. However, with not having the influencer in there, in this section, I'm looking under conflict of interest, the first paragraph after where it says, it's the third line, fourth down, refrain from voting upon, I would like to put influence or otherwise participate in any manner. And later on it does somewhat talk of influence. However, when you have an administrator or a board member or someone who, hey, I know you're not on that committee, but I have I have a buddy that does X, Y, or Z. They're a great company. They start putting
Ms. Fisher,
influence
can
and
I
it
just
goes
make
to
a
others.
suggestion though?
Yes.
And I don't know how we get there as a board. I would like to hear what we could do. It looks like you have every policy with your notes on it.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I'm saying though is there is no way for me to come to an agreement based on a document you have with your notes on it. Like, I don't understand it. I would have to read what you're adding. So is there a way we can table all of these policies? You could type your suggestions. They can get emailed to us so we can read them. I would
This,
not
and see,
even be
that
able to
was,
consider
that was the
way this
reason
is
in the
being
past,
presented.
that was the reason in the past we actually discussed policies. We actually had a study session and discussed policies.
But no
and-
matter how we were discussing it, unless I could sit
Right.
home by myself and read every policy in the context with the language you're adding, I cannot process what I'm doing. Like, I would never vote on revisions that were presented this way.
I'd be happy to send my documents. That wasn't an option.
Well, that's what I thought.
Actually, and
that's what-
technically,
that-
based on these policies, it's not an option because that is a one-way communication and thereby is a meeting.
Well, then I guess we can't revise any policies because I can't vote on stuff you're reading aloud unless other people can.
Dr. Finch, I have a question. So if we, hypothetically, if we were to revise a policy if we were to all agree to revise a policy that has been already presented to us with a first and second reading, would we not then have to have additional readings as well as pay the district attorney to review our revisions to make sure they're legally compliant?
That is correct. Both, you would need to do it twice, and I would recommend an attorney look at it, because
Would be a
anytime,
one-time would be one, and then the second would be the second. So actually discussing it once is the first reading. Any
but you haven't made
changes-
any changes yet.
The second
so
one would be the
as soon as you
second.
make changes, you'll have to do it twice, but that's what you
No,
want to do.
No,
You want it
not
in
in
a
our state, that's what I'm saying.
I would respectfully disagree with that. The intention of that policy to have 2 readings was not to have 2 more readings every time a change is made.
Okay.
It was to prevent a policy from being pushed through in summation, from being presented at a work session that occurs on a Monday night and then be on the agenda on Tuesday night for approval.
Those were this board's rules, correct?
That is. we had
That
a
was
research-
that was our policy
Okay.
that we implemented to prevent that. That's why it says
Two.
the 2 readings.
Oh.
But if you have a first reading and we make some changes
Then we
before
have-
it comes up a second time, it can still be approved at the second reading if the majority of the board decides that.
Because that's the purpose of the second meeting, is that any questions from the first that we've done in the public meeting or that we have individually to add, subtract, understand, process, it's all done within that 2 weeks. So when the second meeting occurs, we're up to speed.
But I think what Ms. Tweedy is asking from a processing standpoint, deep changes or philosophical shifts needs processing time, and would be wise as a board to, in my opinion, to table, get your, if there are changes on every or most of them, to give every board member a chance to process what you're thinking, and then come back. That's not a bad suggestion by Ms. Tweedy, but
I guess so. Right, for a point of clarification, because I am with Miss Tweedy without
violating open meetings.
right. How do we do that without violating open meetings?
You're not telling you how you're going to vote.
Right, you're just sharing the information of
Correct.
a suggestion,
And
right?
you could give that to me
And I thought,
if you had any disagreement.
right, so you could distribute
Correct.
ideas and suggestions for the policy. We can process them prior to the next meeting, and then at the next meeting, if we want them changed or not, that's when somebody would have to move to amend those policies based
Right.
on what they've read or not read, or
Right.
seen or not seen.
But that's not any different than what we've always done, other than the fact that we're not sending the questions so we don't all have the opportunity to read it. So that's why tonight, because Ms. Fisher's got her stuff only for herself, so we haven't read it. But it's not any different than we could ever have done it.
I'm just saying, because I would.
And I agree with you. I can't.
I either need to vote on what I read,
Correct.
or I need more time. I
But
can't do this.
But what I'm saying is we're not doing anything. This is not a great big new idea. This is something that we have promised each other that we're going to do. We are going to ask the questions within that 2-week time frame so everyone can digest what comes out of it. So I think we just skipped that part this time, and we'll do
Well,
it right the next time.
I would like to respectfully say we didn't miss that part. I did request that we actually discuss these policies at the last meeting and at the prior meeting when we said we were changing them once and then we were going to change them again. We've seen them multiple times because we wanted to make a change and then knowing we were going to make a secondary change again in the next week.
But those were mainly law-driven.
Well,
not-
and that's my concern with what we're talking about right now, because I would like to know the change to BE. It says, a meeting indicates a one-way electronic communication, so one member sent to a quorum. So if I were to send my notes to this board, regardless of saying anything else, just send my notes, I have now violated open meeting laws, if that is already in law. It's being put in policy. It's being put in policy based on ASBA's recommendation, which means a lawyer saw it somewhere and said, you need to do this. So if I were to send my notes, I have violated open meeting laws. That's the problem. That's the reason that
Can we
have
table
that.
it and get legal advice on how we can distribute this information?
That's an idea.
Thank you.
I think
Do you have significant changes to all 16 policies?
I can tell you which ones. One,
Because perhaps we can table some and go ahead and approve others.
and then I can find out what would be a good way to, maybe it has to be a study session
I
or,
think there is
or
the
a
one,
discussion topic. or
the,
something.
the student wellness, I would like to,
Is there anything anyone that
well,
you don't
the
want to change?
student wellness, I would like us to discuss because we actually had a community member that has asked us to discuss this policy.
Okay.
They have sent us, so that's
Is
that
there,
one.
is there anyone that,
Are there any that
is
we could-
the GLCD. I'd like to commend Dr. Galligan for the work they've done on this. I couldn't find anything that was questionable or that I didn't agree with on it. That one, JLCD.
Can approve one.
Do I have to go through a motion to table these individually?
You can table them all. It's a bunch.
Can I table them all at one time?
There's
Sheila,
separate
Ms.
action
Taylor is
items?
saying there are separate action
I
items.
think you can, because that's not how we got it.
They weren't
set
listed
up,
on the
right?
consent agenda.
and
It's
we
painful.
won't table the one that we need, that can go forward?
Ms.
And-
Tweedy, do you have a motion?
I
Would
moved-
you, no, you have to amend the motion
I-
for 5A, I believe.
I apologize. Point of clarification. Is JLCD the one that is not? Okay.
That is the one, the very
LCD.
last one, item
Okay,
5P.
great. Thank you so much.
But I think you have to amend your original
We don't have
motion.
to, we don't have to amend it. We can just say, we can just move to
Okay.
table it and
Correct.
because. and
I
that's
move
not-
that the governing board table the
Five.
second reading.
Just say item
I think
5A.
you can just say
Okay,
five,
I move
yeah.
that the governing board table item 5A.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Are-
opposed?
Are we,
Okay.
I
point
move
of,
that the governing
Okay, I'm
board.
sorry, Mrs.
Are we
O'Brien.
gonna vote?
are we voting electronically? We're just
No.
voting.
We're
Okay,
just-
okay, I'm
Because
just
that's a change.
I thought so. I just
Thank you
wanted to
for
make sure.
clarifying, Mrs. O'Brien. Okay,
I move
moving
that
on.
the governing board table 5B.
Second.
Second. Oh,
All
sorry.
those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move
Any
that the go-
opposed? No.
I move that the governing board table 5C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that the governing board table 5D.
All those in favor? Oh,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that the governing board table 5E.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that the governing board table 5F.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Sorry.
I move that the governing board table 5G.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that the governing board table 5H.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I move that the governing board table 5.
Second.
Nobody's opposed, right?
Nobody's opposed.
I move that
Nobody's
the
opposed.
governing board table 5I.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this is the one. J, no.
Keep
No,
going.
it's the very last
Oh.
one,
Last
Darcy.
one.
I move that I move that the governing board table 5J.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I move that the governing board table 5K.
Second.
All those in favor?
Uh,
Aye.
Aye.
I move, is this the last one?
No.
Front
I move
L,
that the
M,
governing
N, O.
board table 5L.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that the governing board table 5M.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that the governing board table 5N.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that the governing board table 5O.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's the one we're approving.
Okay, so I have to interject here. I think this is a record. I don't think this board has ever agreed on so many items all in a row.
Let's not talk about that right now.
I
Just saying.
recommend that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt the revised policy JLCD, medicines administering medicines to students.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thought it was on the-
Oh, it's
Go ahead and
Aye.
vote electronically.
I know, I already did. I was going to say,
Official.
how come I
The
saw
early
that?
returns are positive.
Aye.
from Ms.
Okay,
Ordway.
is it 5-0?
Aye.
Correct.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the consent agenda, I will need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items A through J.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hearing none. Do we
That
have an
also-
electronic vote on that? Okay, no electronic vote. Motion carries 5-0. Moving right along to action item 7A, professional travel for superintendent to attend the AASA National Conference.
I'm not trying to make this interesting. I'm just.
I know, a lot of papers to
We're
sort through.
getting ahead of ourselves.
Fast.
I recommend that the governing board approves all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy.
No, we're on 7A.
One before it.
We're on
Professional travel
7A.
for superintendent.
If someone has it, just read it, please.
I move that the governing board
Sorry.
approve professional travel for the superintendent to attend the AASA National Conference on Education in Los
Second.
Angeles, California,
Oop,
February 14 through the 16th, 2019.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And it is popping up electronically, so cast your ballot electronically as well. And that sounds like a 5-0. Motion carries. Action item 7B, which is the employee travel, the one you just had up.
I move that the governing board approve all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy, GCCE.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cast your ballot electronically. Motion carries 5-0. Excellent. All right. Action item 7C, approve addenda pre-approvals.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Well, actually, I have a question. Some of these are being paid for out of student activities, student, not just student activities, but student funds. Do we have the paperwork from the students? I mean, it's unusual to see, we would not approve spending the students' money themselves. We need to have meeting minutes. They should have had that, and it should have been approved through them. It wouldn't go through this process. Why are we seeing the 850 account?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, yes, anything that would be coded to student activities would require minutes of the student body approving those prior to the expense, and we're including all addenda that are non-IBN in the pre-approval process.
So even though
regardless of the fund.
it's student there, even though this is their expenditure?
That is correct.
Okay. It just threw me off because it's not our money at all.
It is not, but it was our understanding that regardless of the source, the board wanted to see all the non-IBN addenda.
Okay, thank you. That was
Okay.
all I had to ask.
All right.
Mhm.
Then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none. Motion carries 5-0. 7D, approve the architect for Hillcrest Middle School.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve DLR Group pending final agreement on the terms of the contract as the architect for the Hillcrest Middle School Modernization Project
Second.
per RFQ 18035.
And second that too.
Okay, so obviously we have a,
Quite a break there, Missy.
no, that's a different presentation. Do you have any information to share, Mr. Miglerino? And I hope you've recovered from my last crazy request.
I'm scratching numbers here, so
Oh, okay.
I already started working on it.
Okay.
Just real quickly to recap, we have a modernization project scheduled for each summer. That was part of the 2013 authorization, the bond authorization, I should say. We have determined that Hillcrest Middle School will be the next school to be modernized. That work is scheduled to start at the conclusion of this school year and in earnest over the summer of 2019. The first step in the process is to name an architect of record. We received 8 responses and had a reviewing team that scored all of those responses. DLR Group was ranked as the highest scoring architectural firm of the group. They've done several projects for us over the years recently, just finishing up the CTE Culinary Restaurant over at Barry Goldwater High School. They've done a number of other projects throughout the state. They are a national company as well. And so we are pleased to announce that they would be the first team member to join in the effort on this particular project. We have a tentative timeline pending the board's decision this evening to be able to get a construction manager at risk named. That would be the general contractor, to get them named early so that we can do constructability reviews based on the scope of the work that will be done, that they will be working on, that DLR Group will be working on getting the design completed. We do have $7 million set aside for construction dollars for this particular project, so we know how much money we have. Now we just need to know how much work we can get done for that that amount of money. And because we are suggesting to use the construction manager at risk process, it'll allow us to be able to determine that the guaranteed maximum price that we're bringing to you guys will fit within the budget that is being funded from the 2013 bond authorization.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for that information. Open it up for questions from board members. Ms. Tweedy, did you have a question?
Okay, it says pending final agreement. So what does that mean? Are you going to come back to us with a final agreement?
President Frank and Ms. Tweedy, yes. We have a standard architectural agreement that was drafted by attorneys a long time ago. We have modified it over the years slightly, again, with attorney input, but it's our own agreement. It was a part of the solicitation, so they're very familiar with it. And we have outlined parameters based on a percentage of the construction dollars for their what we require is a flat fixed fee. So there aren't any variables in the architectural amount. We have not finalized that with DLR Group, but they know what our expectations are. They are in agreement with that. We would finalize that and provide that in a future update, just so you knew the exact amount.
Okay, and then my next question, it seems like construction costs have been escalating, and for example, when we moved community ed, what we were initially told, and then it ended up being almost $100,000 more. We're not going to go over X amount no matter what, and what's the plans if construction's more expensive than you're thinking?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, you are correct. We have experienced price escalation when it comes to construction. We expect that to continue over time, so the longer we delay, the more escalation or inflation we expect to realize. That is true with the community ed project that you mentioned, but in addition to that, there was some scope changes to be able to make the final utility connections that actually were the additional costs relative to that project in order for us to make all of the utility tie-ins for that particular project. So that was more relative to the increases that we saw were the utility costs on that particular project. But there is price escalation. We're fighting that currently at Arrowhead Elementary School. We're finishing that modernization project as we speak, and we expect that to be an issue. But because we're using the construction manager at risk process, we're going to stick to the budget, and then we're going to determine what scope actually fits within that budget. So one of the first steps in the process is to meet with the school and determine what all their needs are, various key leadership personnel within the school, as well as any community input. And then it's a prioritized list of what they'd like. And this is true even if we weren't experiencing price escalation. Typically the wish list is 120% of the budget, and then we start scaling things back and fitting it within the budget. That is normal practice for any one of our modernization projects. Unfortunately, when we see price escalations like we have, it gives us, it unfortunately makes those cuts deeper than we would like, or the choices that we have to make. But one of the things about getting started early, it allows us to look at other ideas that might help reduce costs, like starting early, working off schedule when it's not a peak season for those contractors that work in schools. So doing night work, weekend work, so it's not during the summertime when labor is a shortage, which is one of the reasons that's driving a lot of the price escalation that we see today. So by getting started early, it'll give us some options to be able to consider. I don't know if that will fit at Hillcrest because it's a fairly populated campus. There's a lot of students and an active campus. It works better when there's not as large of a student population and we can move students around and, you know, isolate the construction into an area that doesn't affect student safety. But at least getting started early gives us the option to look at those to be able to help reduce costs.
So then what you're saying is that you don't anticipate, or that we will not be going over the set budget, that if there's price escalation, then we would reduce the scope of the work so that it fits within the budget. I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
Expenses that don't come out of this bond authorization with what you're giving us right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, the beginning of the question.
Well, and you're saying, like, there's no
Basically
chance
saying
we're
the same
going to
thing.
go over the bond, what we have in the bond allocated for this. So you're not going to come back, well, not you, but there's not going to be anything brought back to the board that says, oh, this is $100,000 over budget, we're going to have to get into M&O.
Yeah, President
nothing
Frank,
like
Ms.
that.
Tweedy, no, we would be bringing the guaranteed maximum price to you. Remember, we did approve $400,000 worth of adjacent ways. We believe $200,000 of that might be attributed to this project, $200,000 of that might be attributed to a traffic signal. So I was only, when I quoted the $7 million, that was the actual construction dollars. So we have an $8 million line item in the 2013 bond. $1 million of that is soft cost, so to pay the architect for permits, you know, regulatory costs for when we do construction projects. If we can realize some savings, either with the architect or with a permit process, we might move those dollars from soft costs into construction costs, but that would be part of what we bring to you in the guaranteed maximum price. So there can be, you know, it might not be exactly $7 million, it might be $7.25 million with adjacent ways and moving some soft costs, but we'll be bringing that back to the board, and we intend not to bring any M&O dollars into this project regardless of what we're talking about, if that's the question.
Can I just ask a question? We're not approving a budget, we're approving the who. Am I mistaken?
No, we are
doing
approving
the architect.
approving the architect.
But it's
So
good information.
there was
to-
just some clarifying questions that Ms. Tweedy
Okay,
had.
but we're not approving so I'm
But we're
saying
not
our entire
approving.
budget and everything will come
No,
later.
we're not approving
Yeah,
that. We're
correct.
just approving the architect.
Just verifying.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, and, from the looks on your faces, I assume there isn't. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Do we have I don't see it coming up. Okay, there it is electronically. Five oh. And thank you, Mr. Miglerino, for answering our questions and providing the information. So that brings us up to our last action item, approve the superintendent's performance pay goals. So Ms. Tweedy, if I can have a motion for that?
I move that the governing board approve the superintendent's 2018-19 performance pay goals.
Second.
Do we need further discussion on this item? We already covered quite a bit in executive session. Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are your goals public? Like, does the public know the goals?
They will be after this is
So
if
after
they're
we
approved.
approve them.
After
Yeah.
the
After
vote
we
will
approve
be-
them, then you're
Yeah.
going to post them?
We were going to add a minimum of was one line. We were going to add a couple words.
But
so
after
we'll change-
after they're
Correct.
edited, you're going to post. They get posted.
I believe so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we were
my
just
only
adding the
question.
one word in the final goal, the minimum of, I think was the only change that we agreed on.
Yep, on retention.
On retention.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries 5-0. That brings us up to our preview item. Dr. Galligan, you have the final item for tonight's board meeting. The time is 8:15, no pressure.
That was so unfair.
Oh, President.
Nice.
I said no pressure.
Frank, okay. President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. Tonight we bring a preview item regarding the request to apply for alternative school status for Deer Valley's night program that will start on January 22nd, 2019. We identified a need to have a different calendar with the night program so we could capitalize on a different 100th day. With that change, we asked ADE about school calendars and how to go about doing that. To run as a separate alternative campus, we must apply with ADE to be approved as an alternative school. The timeline to apply for the alternative school status falls between October 1st and January 15th, with official notification to school districts in March. To meet the criteria set forth by ADE, we will need to create a mission statement for the school that addresses one of the identified populations, and you can see those populations there. The night school work team, made up of teachers, educators, departments, noted that bullet 1 and bullet 3 would best meet the population of students we hope to target through this school. In addition to the mission statement, there are other considerations we will need to make based on those requirements from ADE, and you can see what those are here. You will have noted from that previous slide that there are two considerations that make becoming an alternative school this year not possible. One of them is schools must fill out an online application and upload their mission statement. That mission statement that is uploaded must be the one that is in effect on October 1st, 2018. And the second one is schools must include total enrollment of students as of October 1st, 2018, and the number of students by category on their initial enrollment, and the category is that list right there. With that in mind, we will implement the night school in the spring and summer of 2019 as a program, as originally planned, then seek alternative school status for the 2019-20 school year. The recommendation to apply to ADE for alternative school status for the night program for the 2019-20 school year will be brought as an action item to you at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, do board members have questions for Dr. Galligan? Ms. Tweedy.
I just have one simple question. Are you going have a process or something? Do you have to come up with a name by then? The
We're working
name
on
we
it.
saw was really funny, but I thought we should go with Plan
We had a
B.
few laughs in agenda review.
We have,
Ellie at
we're working
night.
on a new name.
That we
That's
are.
what it said.
It'll be awesome.
It will.
So we just weren't sure. So do you have to have a name though when you
Yeah.
apply?
Yeah.
We'll be looking forward to hearing another new name.
Questions from other board members on this preview item? Sure? No? Ms. O'Brien? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Galligan. All right, so future meetings and dates are posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we
Second.
adjourn the meeting.
Mrs. Ordway, you're
Second.
too fat. You're not in a hurry to leave, are you, Mrs. Ordway? Okay. All right.
My knee hurts.
Let me think. Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none?
We don't.
The meeting is adjourned at 8:20. And almost